for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability, which makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org.
Hello, this is Jim Steckman, and for the next hour I'll be reading from the August 8th issue of The Athletic on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. This first article is a feature entitled, Does SEC, Big Ten, or Congress Run College Football? Examining the Candidates Atop the Chaos, by Justin Williams. For better or worse, it looked as if the chaos engine that is college football finally had a hand on the wheel. Two hands, actually. Leaders from the SEC and Big Ten met in February in New Orleans, the most powerful leagues breaking bread to decide the future format of the college football playoff. Super conference powers activated. But old habits die hard. Only weeks later, the Big Ten still wanted more automatic qualifiers for the playoff, while the SEC suddenly leaned towards a more at-large bids. Just like that, the sport's newest power couple was already on the rocks as the chaos revved on. College football has long been plagued by too many forces pulling in too many directions with no one in command. It's a confounding existence for such a popular, lucrative sport, but it's also what makes it so fascinating. We love the mess, exhausting as it may be. Now, after 2 decades of realignment and defining legal battles, college sports is embarking on a new era in which schools pay players directly with a lingering question. Who is really in charge of college football? In no particular order, these are the contenders, and they go all the way to the top. Greg Sankey, SEC Commissioner, and Tony Petitti, Big Ten Commissioner. The juxtaposition between the two illustrates why it's so difficult to build any sort of consensus in the sport. They helm the two most powerful conferences, but they are also very different commissioners of very different leagues. Sankey's longevity has painted him as the villain in recent years, courtesy of disruptive realignment moves, CFP disarray, and the SEC's general air of self-importance. But the vibes have shifted with the latest playoff debate. Sankey, favoring more at-large spots, seems to have more support among fans, while Petitti, a former television executive, is sticking with a model heavily on automatic qualifiers and made-for-TV play-in games he could pair it with. This has increasingly put the Big Ten commish on an island. Petitti can afford to be unpopular, evidenced by the Big Ten's bottom line and winning the past 2 national championships. The reality is similar for Sankey. Despite the current disconnect, both leagues are thriving and will dictate the future of the sport one way or another, the playoff format in particular, which the SEC and Big Ten have final say on. It's puzzling that the two can't seem to get on the same page, but the rest of college football should brace itself for what happens if they finally do. Brian Seeley, Commissioner of College Sports Commission. The new sheriff in town, Seeley was handpicked to lead the nascent CSC after a lengthy stint as head of investigations for Major League Baseball. His background endeared him to a job where he is tasked with curbing a century of rule-breaking defiance in college sports. It's an unenviable assignment, especially after a bumpy takeoff for the commission, but it's a challenge Seeley ran to, in the words of Big 12 Commissioner Brett Yormark. One of the purported pillars of the CSC is an enforcement arm with some teeth, meant to deter bad actors and corner cutters in ways the NCAA never did. It was installed to regulate the revenue-sharing cap that schools must adhere to and evaluate the fair market value of name, image, and likeness deals between athletes and third parties. We haven't seen it in action yet, and many remain skeptical, including the lawyers gathering outside the CSC's freshly erected gates. If Seeley can effectively snuff out and drop the hammer on rule breakers and evade legal entanglement, it will give him and the CSC considerable influence. If not, he'll be another cook in an already crowded and dysfunctional kitchen. U.S. Congress. Many of the sport's traditional leaders are asking Congress to legislate the course for college football, with the NCAA and power conferences lobbying for federal legislation and antitrust exemptions. The goal is to set in stone the newly implemented House settlement that cleared the way for revenue sharing and allowed college athletes to remain students rather than employees, with the hope of slowing the onslaught of legal battles. Congress also holds the keys to adjusting the Sports Broadcasting Act, which could factor into the next round of television rights negotiations. But if you think it's far-fetched for the various conferences and administrators to get on the same page, good luck wrangling consensus in Congress. Those advocating for it will tell you that fixing college sports is a nonpartisan issue with coast-to-coast support, but that has yet to manifest itself on Capitol Hill, where numerous hearings and drafted bills have gone nowhere. The SCORE Act recently became the first bill to survive committee markups and could be put to a vote in the House of Representatives this fall, but it has little bipartisan support and plenty of outside opposition. President Donald Trump. POTUS threw his hat in the ring with a recent executive order that touts a goal of stabilizing collegiate athletics. In a more realistic sense, it simply adds another, very notable name to the list. The order affirmed much of what college sports leaders are lobbying for on the Hill, while also stressing the value of preserving Olympic and other non-revenue sports. An executive order can't establish law or offer antitrust exemptions. Congress has to do that, but it can influence and guide Congress, something Trump has shown a penchant for on the Republican side. The order also alluded to federal funding decisions as one way to advance its preferred policies, which is worth tracking. Trump's impact here remains to be seen, but the interest now rises to the highest office of American politics. Charlie Baker, NCAA president. Don't laugh. Yes, the role of the NCAA president is often equivalent to sitting atop a carnival dunk tank, but Baker has quickly and quietly worked to stabilize the industry since taking the job in March 2023. He abandoned predecessor Mark Emmert's crusade to uphold the amateurism model by taking a proactive approach to the House settlement, avoiding another costly judicial defeat in the process, and has worked to get the conferences and constituencies on message when lobbying for congressional intervention. Baker has also been willing to cede control to power conferences in an effort to keep the NCAA viable. The organization has far less influence under the settlement, though at least for the time being it remains the only semblance of a centralized leadership across all of college sports. And if there is any headway with Congress, the NCAA will continue to have a seat at the table. Cody Campbell, businessman and Texas Tech board chair. The billionaire oil magnate and Texas Tech mega booster is hoping to add another line to his CV, the man who saved college sports. He even created a non-profit dubbed Saving College Sports, the same name as the executive order Trump recently signed. It's a passion project for Campbell, a former Red Raiders football player who believes the TV popularity of college football can be leveraged in a way that boosts overall revenues, allowing all schools, not just the elite programs, to maintain their non-revenue sports while still bringing in enough to pay the athletes. Quote, "My concern is that a lot of legislative proposals that we have are just essentially ensuring we stay on the same path, which will lead to destruction of the system," Campbell told The Athletic. "We need to start thinking long-term and more about the greater good," unquote. Campbell's business acumen gives him a direct line to Congress and the White House. A rumored presidential commission on college sports that Campbell would have co-chaired with Nick Saban never materialized, but Campbell was recently appointed to the President's Council on Sports, Fitness, and Nutrition and will be a prominent advisor. Star head coaches. Coaches remain the faces of college football, particularly if you include Saban as an honorary member. He's not on the sideline at Alabama anymore, or part of a presidential commission, but he has a bullhorn of ESPN and College Game Day. It's a similar pulpit for the likes of Kirby Smart, Dabo Swinney, Deion Sanders, Ryan Day, and others. They don't have a ton of direct power off the field. The COVID-19 pandemic showed as much, but unlike commissioners and other administrators, fans tend to listen when head coaches talk. We saw this at work when the SEC football coaches got behind the at-large playoff format and shifted the league's position. Maybe it won't be the last example. Jimmy Sexton, co-head of Creative Artist Agency's football division. He's the CAA super agent with a high-wattage client roster that includes almost every coach in the SEC. He's also the bane of every athletic director's existence and a stone-cold assassin at the negotiating table. Quote, "In terms of representing coaches, he's the best that's ever done it," said an industry source who requested anonymity despite, or maybe because of, the flattering words. "He's set the bar when it comes to coaches' contracts," unquote. Off the field, Sexton doesn't exactly hold the fate of college football in his hands, but he is pulling the strings when it comes to the game's biggest and brightest personalities. The judicial branch. The court system has arguably had the heaviest hand on college football over the past decade plus, paving the way for new NIL guidelines, multiple penalty-free transfers, and stamping out amateurism via the House settlement. Judge Claudia Wilkin had considerable influence, ruling against the NCAA in two prominent cases and presiding over the House settlement, which resulted in roughly $750 million in fees to the plaintiff lawyers. The legal battles aren't over either, with debates on antitrust, employment, and Title IX still on the horizon. The question is whether Congress or the courts will weigh in first. TV networks. It's not as simple as saying ESPN and Fox equates to the SEC and Big Ten, but that's definitely part of it. The sport's preeminent television networks, including CBS and NBC, are neck and neck with high-profile court rulings in terms of what has shaped college football the most in recent years. Conference TV deals and the effect that money has had on realignment altered the fabric of the sport. Many would argue for the worse, though the networks would point to ratings for Texas-Georgia or Big Noon Kickoff and argue otherwise. Amid the high interest, media personalities like Kirk Herbstreit, Pat McAfee, and Joel Klatt have the platforms to shape public opinion. There's also the network's influence on scheduling and the fingerprints of ESPN's Burke Magnus in shaping how the sport is covered. How will these networks approach and depict the next round of negotiations? Do they embrace or encourage a potential Super League consolidation, or will they prefer to maintain the status quo? University presidents. Many fans forget or don't even realize that these are the real bosses. Presidents and chancellors make up the conference boards that commissioners have to answer to, including signing off on realignment and television deals. Some are more athletically inclined than others, and most are heavily influenced by the commissioners and athletic directors they govern. Their names tend to stay out of the sports pages aside from scandals or controversial remarks. Kenneth Starr, Golden Gee, Ed Ray, but in the end, little gets decided or done without their input. How closely these leaders want college football to remain tethered to academia will be a crucial part of the sport's future. College athletes. The dynamic has shifted thanks to the money that players can now earn, but the sprawling, transient nature of college athletics makes it tough for these athletes to organize. Do they want to unionize? Do they want to be considered employees? As the House settlement showed, they could often make the biggest impact in court, but that requires lawyers, judges, and usually years of legal red tape. The same may ultimately be true of the employment and collective bargaining debates. But after decades and decades of having very little agency, the circumstances have changed. And just look at Vanderbilt quarterback Diego Pavia, who is playing another season because he challenged the NCAA in court. CFP Selection Committee. It's a rotating collection of 13 administrators, media members, and former players and coaches, most of whom you couldn't name if they knocked on your front door. And yet, the College Football Playoff Selection Committee has a vice grip on the sport each fall, serving up weekly rankings and endless frustrations. That role didn't change with the shift from a 4-team field to a 12-team field, and unless Petiti gets his way, it would be the same with 16 teams too. The nature of the current selection process means there will always be controversy, though it appears to be the preferred devil-you-know annoyance for many in the sport. The committee is granted a lot of power, but fans seem more resistant of the formats that would take that power away. That's the end of this featured article. Raiders Geno Smith, Max Crosby caught making obscene gestures toward Seahawks fans is the title of this next article, by Toshin Reed. Las Vegas Raiders quarterback Geno Smith and edge rusher Max Crosby were caught on camera making obscene gestures toward Seattle Seahawks fans on Thursday night as they took the field before their preseason game at Lumen Field. In photos and videos that have circulated on social media and from the Getty Images Wire photo service, a fan appeared to make a gesture and say something toward Smith, who played 5 seasons in Seattle as the Raiders waited outside their tunnel to take the field. Smith responded by holding up both of his middle fingers toward the fan before running onto the field. Crosby also made the same gesture while running onto the field. The fan was holding a sign that read, "Bigger Bust, Geno, or Jamarcus Russell." It was a reference to Russell, the former Raiders quarterback whose career quickly flamed out after he was selected with the number 1 pick in 2007. Smith was a second-round pick in 2013 by the New York Jets, who, after serving as starter in his first 2 NFL seasons, had to wait 7 years before becoming a full-time starter again, this time with Seattle. A Raiders team spokesman declined to comment. It's unclear whether the NFL is looking into the matter, as the league did not immediately respond to a request for comment. A similar obscene gesture last season from the Detroit Lions' Brian Branch resulted in a fine of $10,128. Smith played for the Seahawks from 2019 to 2024. It was his first time taking on his former team since they traded him to the Raiders for a 3rd-round pick this offseason. Smith played 4 snaps before being subbed out for the rest of the game. The game also marked coach Pete Carroll's first time taking on the Seahawks since the franchise let him go following the 2023 season. The contest ended in a 23-23 tie. That's the end of this article. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from The Athletic on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The title of this next article is ESPN's Best Week Ever? Company Chairman Jimmy Pitaro addresses the major NFL WWE moves. By Richard Deitch. London. It's strange to be in a country where ESPN is barely an afterthought. Near the London Eye, hard on the south bank of the River Thames, there are billboards featuring images of soccer stars Kylian Mbappe and Erling Haaland promoting the many sports properties of TNT Sports, which here is a pay TV joint venture between BT Group and Warner Brothers Discovery. TNT Sports airs Championships League, the Olympics, and some Premier League matches, rugby union, tennis, and many other properties. It's a sports broadcasting juggernaut on this side of the pond, and the promotional campaign is the kind of advert you might see for ESPN at a bus shelter in the United States. The worldwide leader in sports slogan has always been a misnomer once you leave the American border. But ESPN made it clear this week that it is the king of American sports broadcasting at the moment. This week has become one of the most monumentous in the 46-year history of the company. 5 years from now, we might be calling it the most impactful week in modern ESPN history. The transactions include the network acquiring the league's NFL network and substantial rights to Red Zone, along with other content assets in exchange for the NFL getting a 10% ownership stake in ESPN. The news was first reported by my colleague Andrew Marchand. On Wednesday, colleague Dan Shanhoff examined key questions around the transaction. The announcement of a launch date, Thursday, August 21st, for ESPN's new direct-to-consumer streaming service called ESPN, a product that is intrinsically linked to the item above, given the most valuable piece of content for any media company today is NFL live game inventory. It is not a coincidence that the launch of ESPN direct-to-consumer coincides with the start of the college football and NFL seasons. A rights agreement for ESPN DTC, direct-to-consumer, to become the exclusive U.S. domestic home of all WWE Premium Live Events, PLEs, including WrestleMania, starting in 2026. The deal is for 5 years, and Disney will pay WWE $325 million a year for the rights, as first reported by the Wall Street Journal. The Athletic has confirmed the length of the deal and dollar figures per sources briefed on the agreement. ESPN also announced another content agreement with the NFL, extending ESPN's rights to cover the NFL draft through 2030 and expanding the Disney networks where the draft can air from ESPN and ABC to include streaming platforms Disney Plus and Hulu. It is a valuable piece of content. The first round of this year's NFL draft averaged 13.6 million viewers. That marked the second most watched first round on record. It was an 11% increase over 2023, which averaged 12.3 million viewers. In a brief interview on Wednesday, ESPN chairman Jimmy Pitaro described the moment as a very important week for his company. The NFL deal was one that had been negotiated over many years. In many ways, it represents the culmination of perhaps Pitaro's biggest objective when he replaced former President John Skipper in 2018, improve his company's crumbling relations with the NFL. Upon arriving in 2018, the ESPN-NFL relationship was fractious, to put it mildly, and that was evident when ESPN executives learned of the Monday Night Football schedule that year. League officials privately grumbled about negative stories on ESPN.com and Outside the Lines. Quote, "I've never worked on a deal for this long," Pitaro said. "This is my 8th year at ESPN, and the conversation with the league actually predates my arrival at ESPN. It really picked up steam, I'd say, about 4 years ago. Then we started to see some light at the end of the tunnel maybe a year ago. We have always been focused on identifying ways to expand that partnership. When I joined ESPN and started to dive in on the NFL media assets, including NFL Network, I saw a pretty obvious way for us to expand our relationship in that way," Pitaro continued. "I made it clear to the league that very early on in my tenure at ESPN. From day one, they've been clear with me that they were very interested in getting this done with us. I guess that's a long way of saying that what has resonated most with me during these conversations is how much the league respected the quality of our coverage. We cover the league 7 days a week, 365 days a year, nonstop across studio, across digital, across social. I have always felt in these conversations that the league really appreciates what we do for them," unquote. No doubt NFL owners also appreciate now owning 10% of ESPN and what that potentially means financially as far as the valuation of that equity now and into the future. Hanging over all of this is government regulatory approval, and that is a massive wild card. Viewers have already had plenty of questions about how ESPN will run NFL Network. Pitaro said ESPN as a company has years of experience with college conference-specific networks. He described NFL Network as one of ESPN's marquee networks. With the transaction, NFL Network will report to ESPN President of Content, Burke Magnus, and he'll have a major role in the editorial shape of the network. You have a right to be skeptical on what the deal means for ESPN as far as its journalism coverage of the NFL. The company still employs fantastic reporters, including Don Van Natta Jr., a Pulitzer Prize-winning investigative reporter with a specialty in NFL reporting. But this is also a company that shuttered Outside the Lines and has let go of a ton of its journalists over the last 10 years. The company's front-facing identity is now defined by opinionists. Never forget, the first letter of ESPN stands for entertainment. Asked about this, Pitaro said the charter on covering the NFL will not change. Quote, "We've been very clear with the NFL from day one that nothing is changing in terms of how we cover the league," Pitaro said. "Nothing is changing in terms of our journalistic principles. To be clear, they never once asked us to change our approach in terms of how we cover them. We are the place of record. A huge part of our DNA is how we cover sports objectively and fairly. They understand, as do all leagues, that that's going to continue, hard stop," unquote. In the time I had with Pitaro, I asked him to address a number of issues on consumers' minds. He provided insight on how ESPN's newly acquired NFL games will be scheduled. He also provided news on WWE fans getting some early matches during premium live events that you could see on linear TV, like cable systems or bundled streaming networks, as ESPN has done with the UFC. ESPN will also increase its coverage of WWE in various content areas. On the NFL Network, quote, "Look, we have a ton of experience here running sports-specific, league-specific, conference-specific networks," Pitaro said. "The best examples are the SEC Network and ACC Network. So NFL Network will be one of our marquee networks that we're distributing at ESPN. Once it closes, the network will report to Burke Magnus. He needs to start thinking about his plans there, but I will tell you the NFL commissioner and team have done a fantastic job building out the NFL Network. We've been partnering with these folks for years on the NFL draft, and we are starting to think about ways that we can expand the partnership. We are fans of the NFL Network programming, What you see today on the NFL Network, we intend to continue. We appreciate the quality of their studio programming, and we're excited to add that into our arsenal. We will continue to distribute it linearly via traditional cable or satellite, so the fan that wants the network linearly will continue to be able to access it that way. But we're adding another option for the fan, which is building it into ESPN direct-to-consumer, unquote. On the Red Zone brand. Note, ESPN would own broad rights to the Red Zone brand and distribute the NFL Red Zone channel to pay TV operators for continued inclusion into their sports packages. Quote, the Red Zone is of vital importance to hardcore NFL fans. We are acquiring linear rights, but on the digital side, we've agreed to bundle ESPN direct-to-consumer with NFL Plus Premium, which includes Red Zone. From our perspective, that is how our fans and customers is going to be able to access all of ESPN plus Red Zone in the NFL Plus Premium app, unquote. On NFL game inventory. Quote, obviously I like the fact that we're getting the additional games. We're licensing 3 new games, and then we're going to move 4 games from the ESPN networks. There are currently 3 side-by-side games, meaning games on ABC and ESPN. Those 3 games, once the deal closes, will move over to the NFL network. Then the game that we have on ESPN Plus will move over to the NFL network. So we'll maintain 7 games within the network. As a part of that, we will have more exclusive windows, meaning 3 new games with exclusive windows. We're getting out of this side-by-side business and moving those 3 games over. So you're going to go from 22 clean windows to now 28 clean windows for NFL games across ESPN networks, unquote. On how he will judge the direct-to-consumer launch on August 21st. Quote, our number one priority at ESPN is direct-to-consumer, but it's not the direct-to-consumer opening weekend. This launch will not be a movie opening, where we evaluate ourselves based on performance for opening weekend. This is a marathon, not a sprint. We're not going to launch with all the features and functionality that will be available a year from now or 2 years from now. Our product teams are excited, but they've been very clear that there will be gradual and regular enhancements to the ESPN experience. I'm not trying to minimize the importance of the launch. I'm just emphasizing the fact that there will be regular updates to the product, unquote. On the WWE acquisition. Quote, the WWE premium level events will help us expand our audience. It's a younger, more diverse audience, which is really interesting to us. These are marquee events, quality storytelling. It's a good fit for us from a churn perspective. One of the biggest challenges we have with the direct-to-consumer business, and what anyone has with a direct-to-consumer business, is churn and seasonality. We're going to work closely with the WWE in terms of minimizing churn and having these events throughout the calendar year. This will also be an opportunity to expand the audience for ESPN and WWE. One of the levers that we can pull is with Disney+. This is family-friendly entertainment, and so we're starting to think about whether we leverage the Disney Plus platform. I know there's some interest from our Disney Plus colleagues. Also, we're going to be including some of those events in our linear networks, at least some of the opening windows to some of the events each year. So we might show the pre-show event and then maybe a couple matches on linear. What's important is that we have a clean break. We've started to speak with the WWE about how we can create a clean break to drive the fan from the linear experience to direct-to-consumer, unquote. That's the end of this article. Joe Mazzulla reaches contract extension to remain Celtics coach, is the title of this next article, by Jared Weiss. Boston Celtics coach Joe Mazzulla has agreed to a multi-year contract extension with the franchise, the team announced Friday. Quote, this is truly a blessing, Mazzulla said in a statement. I would not be here without my faith, my wife, and my children. We are thankful for the partnership with our ownership groups, President of Basketball Operations Brad Stevens, mentorship, and the support of our staff. Most importantly, I'm grateful for the players that I have been able to coach the past 3 seasons. I look forward to competing for the Celtics and the city of Boston, unquote. The team did not disclose the terms of the extension. Mazzulla, who led the Celtics to their 18th championship a year ago, was entering the final year of his contract and is now locked in with the Celtics as they begin a rebuilding phase amidst Jason Tatum's Achilles tear and the departures of veterans Kristaps Porzingis and Jrue Holiday. Quote, he understands the job and has a passion for the Celtics that is only rivaled by our most diehard fans, said Stevens. He's worked hard and accomplished amazing things in his first 3 years as a head coach, including averaging over 60 wins per season and winning the 2024 NBA championship. Joe is a gifted leader who brings a consistent commitment to learning, improving, and maximizing each day we get to compete for the Boston Celtics, unquote. Mazzulla had a rocky start to his tenure in his debut season, taking over for a suspended Ime Udoka, but then transformed the organization in his second season to lead the Celtics to another title. He was able to imprint his bold, brash, and empathetic personality on the locker room to build a culture that thrived on versatility and problem-solving. The Celtics tapped into cross-match hunting in the post across the board, which put them at the front of the curve that season as the rest of the league worked to adapt. They built an 8-man rotation where every player could shoot threes and create for the first time this generation, which led to a record three-point volume. Mazzulla adopted polarizing principles, particularly high-frequency three-point shooting, and stood strong on his approach. This put him on rocky standing in his first season when the team was not fully on the same page, but it led to great success his second year. Boston had another strong regular season in 2024, but broke down in the second round of the playoffs against the New York Knicks as Jaylen Brown played through a knee injury. Holiday struggled with several ailments. Porzingis was a shell of himself due to an illness, and Tatum tore his Achilles. With Tatum set to miss most, if not all, of next season, Mazzulla will lead a team in transitional phase. Brown, Derek White, and Peyton Pritchard will lead the team with newcomer and Fernie Simons able to provide scoring punch. Mazzulla was already expected to make changes to the system so the team could keep evolving, but he will have no choice after substantial roster shifts. The Celtics were willing to extend him based on his success with a stacked locker room, but Mazzulla will now be able to show his chops as a coach working with an incomplete roster. That's the end of this article. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from The Athletic on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The title of this next article is Saquon Barkley Declines President Trump's Invitation to Serve on Sports Council by Jana Bardal. Philadelphia Eagles star running back Saquon Barkley told reporters he declined an invitation to serve on President Donald Trump's Council on Sports, Fitness, and Nutrition. The clarification came days after Trump signed an executive order bringing back the presidential fitness test for students in public schools and mentioned Barkley as one of many prominent sports figures on the council. Quote, a couple of months ago it was brought to my team about the council, so I'm not really too familiar with it, Barkley told reporters on Monday. I felt like I'm going to be super busy, so me and my family thought it was probably the best interest to not accept that. I was definitely a little shocked when my name was mentioned, Barkley said, but I'm assuming it's something great, so I appreciate it, unquote. Trump revived the fitness protocol on Thursday with several council members in attendance, including Kansas City Chiefs kicker Harrison Butker, New York Giants legend Lawrence Taylor, LIV golfer Bryson DeChambeau, retired LPGA star Annika Sorenstam, and WWE executive Paul Triple H Levesque. Trump said other council members include former NFL quarterback Tony Romo, current players Nick Bosa and Tua Tagovailoa, as well as NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell. The fitness test was established in the 1960s, but ended during the administration of former President Barack Obama. According to the White House, the order reiterates the administration's, quote, commitment to ending the childhood chronic disease epidemic and ensuring the strength, vitality, and excellence of future generations of Americans, unquote. Barkley flew on Air Force One and played golf with Trump before the Eagles visited the White House to celebrate their Super Bowl 59 victory in April. Amid backlash, Barkley defended himself on a post on X, saying he respects the office and similarly played golf with Obama not too long ago. The fitness executive order was the latest example of Trump's focus on sports during his second term. Earlier this month, he signed an executive order intended to bring order and stability to college sports. In March, Trump established a White House task force for the 2026 World Cup, and on Tuesday, Trump plans to create a task force for the 2028 Summer Olympics in Los Angeles, according to the New York Times. That's the end of this article. This next article is entitled Bills Hard Knocks Takeaways, Josh Allen is Big Man on Campus, Tre'Davious White's Sweet Return, by Tim Graham. The cold open shows Josh Allen taking a seat on the metal bleachers in front of at least 3 cameras and getting mic'd up. With an off-camera producer, he exchanges casual pleasantries. It was an appropriate beginning Tuesday night to the superficial debut of Hard Knocks training camp with the Buffalo Bills. The episode wasn't directed at Bills fans aside from those excitedly merely by witnessing Allen and his mates get the NFL Films slow-mo treatment. Those who followed the Bills didn't learn much. But because HBO's reality sports series is beamed around the world, the objective was to pour this season's foundation, introducing casual football fans and those who don't watch the sport at all to the most important characters. Bills fans likely weren't aware defensive end A.J. Epinesa was a python hunter in the Florida Everglades, but they have an impassioned knowledge of Allen's dominion and cornerback Tre'Davious White's injury history and are well aware of left tackle Dion Dawkins has eclectic interests, which include taking his cars for a spin at Big Indian Drift Pit on the Cattaraugus Indian Reservation. The first sentence out of the narrator Liv Schreiber's mouth declares, "The Bills do things their way." He was referring to the Bills being one of only 5 NFL teams that still go away to college for camp, the theme of the first 9 minutes of the 57-minute episode, and revisited throughout. Buffalo media has covered the training camp dynamic at St. John Fisher University for 25 years. Packing the dorm life and team bonding and schlepping all that equipment are annual content in the Western New York. The Pittsford Farms Dairy is a long-established location to spot players away from campus. No secrets are revealed, no epiphanies are encountered. Hard Knocks wants to tell stories over 5 weeks. However, and to do that effectively, it must set the scene and introduce everyone to the Bills' culture and top personalities. Here's what they saw. Star of the show. Josh, and more Josh. There's no doubt who's Buffalo's leading man is. Allen is the common thread throughout most of the episode. The episode is stuffed with Allen highlights, throwing missiles, hurdling fools, and getting married to actress Haley Steinfeld. A segment on getting in sync with new receiver Joshua Palmer provides an insight into QB wide receiver relationship building. Toward the end of the episode, NFL Films follows along as owner Terry Pegula gives Allen a tour of the new Highmark Stadium. Best Supporting Performer. White's comeback story and personality are prominently displayed. White suffered a season-ending knee injury in 2022 and a season-ending Achilles injury in 2023. Last year, he spent 4 disappointing games with the Los Angeles Rams and 9 mediocre games with the Baltimore Ravens before re-signing with the Bills this offseason. The 30-year-old White, in full pads after practice, is seen running a hill several times behind the St. John Fisher Gym as part of his training. Quote, "A lot of hard work put in, man," White tells general manager Brandon Beane on the sideline during practice. "Man, I'm having the best fun of my life. Like, this is family, bruh. It makes me come with the most. I really love these dudes," unquote. White and Christian Benford also make an entertaining trip to Pittsford Farms Dairy. White introduces Benford to his namesake sundae, warmed-up chocolate chip cookie under vanilla ice cream, hot fudge, whipped cream, and sprinkles, and then asks for 10 more to be made so they could hand them out to the customers in line. Best quote. Quote, "Josh Allen is so effing good, man. Damn, man, I love it," unquote, mic'd up offensive coordinator Joe Brady to himself. Sights unseen. Production for the first episode included events only through Friday's intra-squad scrimmage at Highmark Stadium. That means we don't learn any behind-the-scenes information about running back James Cook's decision not to practice Sunday and Monday, despite being a full participant in mandatory minicamp and through the first 8 camp sessions. Cook wasn't even mentioned in the debut, but he will be a star next Tuesday night, even if the Bills and Cook's camp reach some sort of resolution. Cook, entering the final season on his rookie contract, wants a new deal after rushing for 16 touchdowns last year. Most revealing scene. Ben Ford was mic'd when rookie cornerback Max Hairston suffered a scary non-contact knee injury last Tuesday in practice. Ben Ford whispers a prayer in Hairston's ear. Quote, "Heavenly Father, please give him strength," Bedford says. "As we honor everything you give us, please heal him. You know it's never worse as much as we think it is, Lord. God bless his mind, his soul, his body, his everything, Lord. Please give him strength. Lord, as we're weak, bless everything we do because we can't do it without you. In Jesus' name we pray, amen." Unquote. Hairston's diagnosis was a sprained LCL, which will sideline him for a few weeks but won't erase his season as feared. Funniest moment. Undrafted rookie receiver Stephen Gosnell scored a 42-yard touchdown Tuesday, running a flag route that got behind White and the safeties. Gosnell dove into the end zone, made the catch before somersaulting and then spiking the ball, well, like an undrafted rookie. The ball left his hand early and skipped 20 yards out of the end zone. Coaches dissect the film of the play. Brady, quote, "Hate the spike. That's an awful spike. Oh my God," unquote. Receivers coach Adam Henry, quote, "He said, 'I've arrived,'" unquote. Brady, quote, "What did he say?" unquote. Henry, quote, "That's what he said. Josh looked at me when he called the play, looked at me and nodded. He said, 'I arrived.' He said, 'I knew that ball was coming to me.' He said, 'I arrived. They know who I am now,'" unquote. Maybe Gosnell is a Hard Knocks legend in the making, like Chris 7-Eleven Hoagie and Boomer Grigsby. That's the end of this article. Yadier Molina to return to Cardinals will be in uniform as coach for the Cubs series, is the title of this next article by Katie Wu. Former St. Louis Cardinals catcher Yadier Molina will be in a uniform as a member of the Major League coaching staff for the team's upcoming 3-game series against the Chicago Cubs, manager Ollie Marmol said Friday. It will be Molina's first public appearance as a member of the organization since he retired in 2022. Molina, who spent his entire 19-year career with St. Louis, will be in the Cardinals' dugout as part of Marmol's staff for Friday and Saturday's games. He informed President of Baseball Operations John Mozeliak and Marmol earlier in the season that he would attend the series, and the three quickly agreed to have Molina in the dugout as a guest coach. Quote, "He reached out to Mozeliak and me asking what we thought about him being in uniform," Marmol said to The Athletic. "My response was an easy one, absolutely," unquote. Molina's return comes during a trying time for the organization. The Cardinals' transition season resulted in a sell-off at the trade deadline, with the Cubs' future uncertain. Mozeliak will step down at the end of the year, and current advisor Chaim Bloom will take over as president of baseball operations, has already placed a firm focus on investing in player development and the minor leagues, but it remains to be seen what Bloom's plan for the major league team will be in 2026. Molina has been candid about his desire to manage in MLB and will manage Team Puerto Rico for the second time in next year's World's Baseball Classic. Marmol has 1 year remaining on his contract. With the new front office coming in, speculation over their skipper's future is bound to happen, though the Cardinals have given no indication that they will make a managerial change. Marmol is aware of the outside noise, but that won't deter him from ensuring Molina can be around the team. Quote, "Anytime you get a chance to have somebody like Yadi around your players, you take it," Marmol said. "It's a no-brainer. The experience, the leadership, the presence he brings, it impacts everyone. As soon as I heard he was going to be in town, inviting him to sit next to me was the right move. It's good for the players, good for the staff, and honestly, it's great for the fans too," unquote. Molina has limited his public appearances since his retirement. He has returned to Busch Stadium just once, when longtime battery mate Adam Wainwright retired in 2023. The Cardinals hired Molina as a special advisor to Mozeliak before the 2024 season, but Molina was notably absent from the organization. The 10-time All-Star acknowledged his time away from the Cardinals to The Athletic in March, citing a need to be around his family, especially his 16-year-old son, Yanuel, who recently committed to playing college baseball at the University of Texas at Arlington. Molina also recognized how his prolonged absence could raise concerns with fans and expressed he hoped he'd be able to return to St. Louis at some point this season. Quote, "I would love to be there," Molina said during spring training. "I would love to teach and coach the catchers, but right now my priority is to be with my family. I wish life was different for me to be there with the organization and in the city, and I hope that comes soon because I really miss it," unquote. Molina won't have a set role with the club over the weekend, though he's sure to work with catchers Pedro Pages and Yohel Pazo. Marmol hopes the entire clubhouse will take advantage of the opportunity, especially given the influx of youth post-trade deadline. Quote, "I really enjoyed my time with Molina, both as a coach and as a manager," Marmol said. "I'm looking forward to having him back in uniform. There's a deep respect there, not just for how he sees the game, but for the way he carries himself. Even in just a short window, I know he can leave a lasting impact on our players," he added. "He leads by example. And, in his own powerful way, he shows these young guys what's possible when you pour everything you have into the game. That kind of presence, it stays with you," unquote. The Cardinals kick off their division showdown against the Cubs with right-hander Michael McGreevy facing off against lefty Matthew Boyd. That's the end of this article. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from The Athletic on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The Big Ten and Private Equity, Why College Sports' Richest Conference is Doing Its Homework, is the title of this next article. By Scott Dochterman. With revenues likely to soar past $1 billion this fiscal year, the Big Ten's deep pockets give its membership advantages well beyond its competition. But even for college athletics' richest conference, the cash never seems enough in today's ever-changing sports landscape. Most Big Ten members will receive a projected payout of $82.7 million from league coffers this fiscal year, a 45% increase from just 3 years ago. But the dawn of the revenue-sharing era, which permits schools to disperse up to $20.5 million with their athletes this year, has Big Ten Commissioner Tony Petitti searching for ways to grow revenue beyond traditional means. That includes exploring partnerships with private equity firms. As first reported by Sportico earlier this year, the Big Ten, through market advisor Evercore, has sought offers from private equity firms to secure upfront cash for its membership. Months later, whether or not the Big Ten chooses to partner with an outside firm remains under discussion. The stakes of the league's exploration are simple. Don't let the new budget item of athlete revenue sharing send the athletics program's other financial goals to the back burner. Quote, "Our membership has made clear that modernizing how conference offices work and function on behalf of their members needs to change as we get into this next world," Petitti told The Athletic in July. "We started this process more than a year ago to just evaluate the way we do everything. What things can we do that we see that the NBA does really well in the central office or MLB or NFL? Some of the things they do we'll never do because they don't apply to college sports. That's totally fine. But what can we do? Is there a strategic partner, a capital partner that would help get you there faster, more efficiently, better, stronger? I'm not sure the answer to that yet, but the process of doing it is ongoing," unquote. Some professional sports leagues and franchises have engaged with private equity, but there are significant differences and limitations in how a public institution or a nonprofit conference like the Big Ten can interact with a global investment firm. Two of the industry's most powerful firms that could have interest in the Big Ten are Sixth Street and Redbird Capital. Sixth Street has partnerships with the San Francisco Giants, Real Madrid, FC Barcelona, and the San Antonio Spurs. Redbird's capital client list includes AC Milan, the Boston Red Sox, Liverpool FC, and the PGA Tour. Neither Petitti nor school officials would discuss specifics on negotiations. The Big Ten's membership includes 16 public universities and 2 private institutions located in 14 states. Most of its athletic departments are self-supporting and receive little or no funding from their state or university, but public universities are state agencies, which makes any attempt by an athletic department to secure funding from a private equity firm tricky. Quote, "It may be impossible because you're truly a public entity," Ohio State Athletic Director Ross Bjork said. "We're owned by the state of Ohio, so there are lots of complications in terms of the infusion of this money, but I do think we have an obligation to look at creative ways to generate revenue. At this point, there would be more questions than answers, and I think that's why you probably have seen nobody do it yet, at the institutional level," unquote. Indiana Athletic Director Scott Dolson said his institution was unlikely to take on private capital. Quote, "There's always internally where we can figure things out, particularly on campus as things change and evolve financially," Dolson said. But at the same time, that's where Commissioner Petitti is really cutting edge on what we can do to leverage our 18 schools, our 18 brands together to maximize that value and grow as college athletics grows," unquote. Private equity is designed to create wins for both businesses and investors. PE firms provide capital up front in exchange for an equity stake in the business, its product, or perhaps a subsidiary. For conferences dealing with realignment departures or other revenue challenges, a private capital arrangement could keep the league financially afloat and solidify the membership in return for equity stakes in the conference or naming rights. Traditionally, universities have chosen to borrow from banks at low interest rates to fund projects rather than involving private equity. But with athletes receiving direct payments and other new benefits from their schools, conferences and institutions are pondering non-traditional tactics. Quote, "There are pros and cons," said Adam Brenneman, who played tight end at Penn State and UMass and is now a media personality and co-founder of the College Sports Company, a venture-backed organization. "The pros, you get a lot of capital up front. You get money to invest and give to your schools and build the student-athlete experience even better and to really run it like a true business. Anytime you bring in outside money, you're giving up a little bit of control. You're giving someone else who is now at the table helping make decisions. In exchange, private equity doesn't just give money and walk away. They're going to give the money and invest, and they're going to be part of the decision-making in the future," unquote. Among the options the Big Ten has discussed in general conversations with private equity firms, creating a separate subsidiary company for its media rights, taking on more sponsorships, or accepting a large lump sum in exchange for a percentage of future revenue. On top of the money they're directing to athletes, most Big Ten programs are saddled with significant debt as a result of past, current, and future facility projects. The Big Ten's 16 public athletic departments list a combined $2.324 billion in athletic debt, according to their latest NCAA financial statements, which were obtained by the Athletic through the state open records request. 12 of the schools owe at least $90 million, and 8 owe more than $160 million. None of those figures include Northwestern, a private university which is building an $850 million football stadium. No Big Ten school reports more athletic debt than Illinois at $312.5 million, although its 2024 fiscal year payment was manageable, $26.46 million. But with the revenue-sharing expenditure in mind, Athletic Director Josh Whitman will consider every option, including private equity. Quote, "I do think that evaluating opportunities for outside capital, whether it's at the institutional level or the conference level, everybody's having those conversations," Whitman said. "I don't know if any of them will ultimately come to fruition, come across the finish line, but we're at a point now where the business of college athletics is growing," unquote. A short-term cash influx at the league level could help Illinois, Ohio State, Michigan, or any other member. The Big Ten did just that during the 2020 pandemic, selling 10% of Big Ten Network to Fox, which allowed it to boost its school payouts to within $10 million of the original budget. While other leagues fear falling behind financially, the Big Ten is looking for ways to stay ahead. The league's financial growth and unprecedented exposure on the 3 linear broadcast networks for football, plus cable channels and multiple streaming options, make it a highly valued property. 10 of last season's 15 highest-rated college football games involved a Big Ten team, and despite not winning an NCAA title in men's basketball since 2000, the league has led the nation in average attendance every year since 1977. According to its most recent tax return, the Big Ten reported $942 million in earnings, and its revenue trajectory should make it the first league to cross that $1 billion. That makes it an attractive candidate for any investment firm, according to Erwin Kishner, co-chair of Sports Law Group with the Herrick Feinstein law firm. Quote, "The revenue size of the Big Ten is enormous," Kishner said. "There are several other sides to it, including merchandising and streaming, potentially or probably the in-game experience, potential rights to ultimately restructure, There's some definite opportunities in that space that could produce significant returns, unquote. Kishner represents several professional and college sports teams and leagues in transactional matters, specifically deals related to private equity, stadium development, media rights, and sponsorship and advertising. Quote, college sports is ripe for private equity in the sense that it fits the investment profile that private equity wants to invest in, Kishner said. Once you open up the floodgate, I think you'll start seeing more deals happen. And frankly, I'm confident if it's not this deal, it's just a matter of time until a deal gets done, or several deals get done, unquote. Meanwhile, other leagues and institutions that once were bullish on private equity have backed off. Big 12 Commissioner Brett Yormark was a strong advocate for picking up as much as $1 billion in private capital in exchange for a 15 to 20% stake in the conference. But one Big 12 athletic director, granted anonymity to discuss internal league matters, told The Athletic that as many as 6 Big 12 schools immediately balked at the prospect. The interest rate was too high, they felt, and the league could provide many of the non-financial services as the private firm. The ACC and SEC also have passed on opportunities, and Florida State, which looked heavily into private equity in 2023, has cooled on the option since its legal battle with the ACC was settled. The Big Ten, however, is in a different position. The conference was formed in 1896, and 9 schools have been members for more than a century. Its footprint includes the world's richest corridor from Washington, D.C. to New York, along with major markets Los Angeles, Chicago, Philadelphia, Seattle, and Detroit. Of the Big Ten's 18 institutions, 14 earn full shares. Oregon and Washington receive half shares until 2030, while Maryland and Rutgers have slight reductions as they continue to pay back money borrowed before they became vested Big Ten members. As collegiate athletics' richest conference, the Big Ten and its members will remain patient, perhaps even risk-adverse when investigating whether private capital is the right fit. Should they choose to take that step, they want consensus. Otherwise, the league will seek other opportunities. Quote, it's a conference matter, not only for our athletic directors, but our presidents, said Rod Lenhertz, Senior Vice President for Finance and Operations at the University of Iowa. There's no definition at this point that would tell us we have to go right, left, or indifferent. We're still seeing a lot of this unfold, unquote. And that's the end of the article. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the August 8th issue of The Athletic. Your reader has been Jim Steckman. Thank you for listening.
Coming up next in the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have Vanity Fair. And at 11 o'clock, we have episode 15 and then episode 16 of Lorne by Susan Morrison. Stay with us for these readings and more. You're listening to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Volunteer radio readers broadcast daily readings of newspapers, magazines, and books to people who are blind or have a print disability throughout the city of Buffalo, Western New York, and Southern Ontario's Niagara Peninsula. The Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service has been on the air for almost 40 years. Our broadcast signal is provided at no charge by WNED. Radio Reading Studios are at 1199 Harlem Road. Our agency website is nfradioreading.org. For more information on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, call us at 716-821-5555. following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision,